Welcome to the Royal Botanic Gardens queue on this beautiful spring day in the best tree collection in the world. It's great to have so many leading figures from our industry gathered together in this one place. People from the landscape industry, the forestry industry, the nursery industry, other gardens and other important tree-related organisations. We're looking forward to hearing their strategies and actions that they'll be putting in place in order to combat the biosecurity issues that we face in our industry today with trees.
The issue of biosecurity made headlines in 2016 through heightened awareness of tree pest diseases and invasive tree species. The association, in discharging its duty of care, made advice and guidance available for arborists. This guidance enables the care of our amenity trees. The launch of the association's biosecurity statement and its aims and objectives are supported by many of its partners, several of which are contributing to this video today.
As chairman of the Arboricultural Association, I'm delighted in the way that the association has chosen to take a lead in promoting the case for increased biosecurity and has been instrumental in putting today's video clip together. As a director of Bartram Trees, I'm proud of the way the company has also taken the lead with biosecurity, putting its own biosecurity policy into the public domain. Today is a collaborative event bringing together lead figures from industry, politics and government to collectively make the case for increased biosecurity.
I think this is a very welcome initiative by the Arboricultural Association and I'm delighted to be part of it. I don't think as a country we take biosecurity of our trees sufficiently seriously, and I think it's much more important than people sometimes realise. We are an island. As far as our animals are concerned, we're very, very careful about protecting them. We haven't been quite so careful about doing the same with our trees, and it's high time we did.
Well, I'm delighted to be at Kew for this glorious day when all the trees are starting to come out in leaf. And I'm very much reminded about how, as Minister for Biosecurity, the importance of the health of our trees. And I think it's very, very important that we're all conscious of that. The government is investing quite a lot of money in tree health, but it's a partnership between many organisations, and that's why I think today is so important with so many of us getting together to support biosecurity.
Biosecurity is the process of making sure that that transmission from one site which is infected to another site which is healthy. So biosecurity is thinking that you're not going to move a problem from an unhealthy place to a healthy place.
Well, biosecurity is all about the health of plants and animals. And you might say, well, does this affect the economy? Yes, it certainly affects the economy. But it actually affects our very survival.
Biosecurity can come in various forms, particularly through regulation, but also by industry actions as well. So for regulation, what we can look at are laws and that guide the trade in when to buy its material and where it buys it from. But also what you want is for the industry itself to look at sources of information, current and emerging threats and pests.
Biosecurity, of course, is one of the key issues at the moment for those involved in the tree agenda. There are many ways of trying to raise awareness of this issue, but the key thing, I believe, is that a holistic approach is one that's really required to this particular issue, and that involves bringing together a wide range of stakeholders, from politicians through to public, private sector organisations, developers, promoters, people who are also in the tree industry, obviously arboriculturalists, designers, planners. It's something that everyone really needs to now be addressing.
So why is biosecurity important, particularly for trees? Well, trees frame our cities, they frame our countryside, they produce timber, they absorb carbon, they produce homes for wildlife. They're an important part of making our planet livable.
Dutch elm disease came from Canada on a shipload of logs, devastated all our elms. They're wonderful elms in our countryside, which have now gone completely. That must not happen again. We've had another warning with ash dieback. We must make sure that our trees are protected.
Why is biosecurity important to us? Well, as an industry full of landscape contractors, garden designers and suppliers to the industry, including nurseries and growers, biosecurity is absolute paramount within our industry. So we're very, very concerned, as it might be, with regards to the issues that biosecurity can bring us if it's not kept under control. And we're talking about, plants, pests, diseases, etc. And of course, if these get hold, then obviously, as far as we're concerned, that could be detrimental, obviously, to plant species, tree species, and possibly even, sadly, seeing them disappear completely. So,
our work in particular over the last 10 years or so has been directed at acute oak decline, one of the major threats to our most iconic species of tree in the UK.
Biosecurity is a hugely important issue to the London Tree Officers Association and to tree officers all over the country. As custodians of the urban forests and the public realm, we take biosecurity very seriously indeed, and we have working parties devoted to Massaria, oak processionary moth and cankestane of plane. And we're now considered the UK's leading organisation in Ceratocystis platani and have produced the definitive best practice guidance document about that disease.
Since the advent of Xylella fastidiosa, which started to appear a couple of years ago, this has been the first disease which has joined the dots for us. And effectively, the emergency control measures are so tight and so drastic that they could put you out of business within 24 hours. That's woken everybody up throughout the supply chain. And what it's made us realise is that with biosecurity, the responsibility lies with all of us and the whole supply chain. It can't just be down to any one part of it.
Can you imagine a world without trees? I can't. And yet, a lot of our trees in the UK are under severe pressure from pests and diseases that they weren't a few years ago. It's our members' duty to actually manage those woodlands, to be very aware of biosecurity issues, to notice when there's anything wrong with their trees, and to report anything that they see immediately to the relevant authorities so as we can take immediate action. I would really like to see people in the UK be as aware of tree diseases as they are of animal diseases. And I hope this video helps to do that.
We can't rely all the time on government intervention. What we can do as professionals is to alert the public and alert our own professional organisations as to the changes that we need to see.
With plant biosecurity, you've got to remember that this is something that everyone can play their part in. It isn't just when we don't do our official inspections, but the nursery industry and traders and the public themselves. So it's everyone taking responsibility and being part of this biosecurity message to help protect plants and the environment, but also your industry and the people that you work and serve.
So as an industry, we're working more closely together in collaborative partnership across a range of associations within our own industry and also with government departments as well. So this has been absolutely crucial for us in terms of how we move forward. So I think as we move forward with a greater partnership working not only within industry but also with government departments, this is going to be I suppose a new regime as we move forward. So plant health moving forward is going to be absolutely the top of the agenda.
Here at Kew we have a biosecurity policy and protocol for the Arboretum. One of our key areas is looking at procurement of trees, and first of all our aim is to buy trees from UK nurseries so that we know that they're propagated and grown in this country. If we have to import trees, then we bring them into a holding area where they're grown for at least a year before they're released into the landscape, and in that way we ensure that they're clean, free from pests and diseases, they're examined regularly by DEFRA officials, and we know that we're not introducing any new exotic pests and diseases that are likely to affect the treescape here at Kew.
our members use a lot of trees and they need to know about biosecurity. We very much support this initiative and are very keen that our members only buy trees from reliable sources, either trees that have been grown in the UK or trees that have been properly quarantined at reliable nurseries.
And nobody wants to stop the importation of trees from Europe and other places. But I think it is important that people who bring them in they should have at least a year being grown in the nursery here to make sure there's nothing nasty on them before they're taken out to customers and replanted.
Part of what we do in the inspectorate is we look at inspections of third country material, that's from outside of the EU, intra-EU traded plant material and plant passporting, and then also surveillance inspections, monitoring and looking for new and unusual or even unknown plant pests and diseases.
We all need to be, not just Institute members, but all public need to be fully aware when we're buying plants for our garden or walking in woodlands, that we're aware of the dangers that pests and diseases can bring into our forests and our parks.
Now, plants are incredibly important for the food we eat, for the environment, and also for our well-being, which is why we must protect them. We launched the GB Plant Biosecurity Strategy in 2014, and my job is to implement that strategy. And we do that through a framework with 5 principles. The first principle is that we must try and predict what pests and diseases might come to the UK. So to do that, we have a prioritised plant health risk register, which allows us to look out internationally and see what threats might arrive in the UK. We also participate in an international plant sentinel network of 28 botanic gardens worldwide, including Kew Gardens where we are today. And that helps give us an early warning of what pests and diseases might be on the horizon and might come to the UK. Secondly, we try and prevent things arriving here. So we do that through targeted inspections at the borders and also through intelligence, working with industry and other partners to try and identify what might arrive and how we keep it out. Thirdly, we need to be prepared for things arriving here. So earlier this year we published a contingency plan. This is a plan setting out our response to a new threat or a pest or disease, and my job is to lead the response against that threat in the event of an outbreak. The fourth element is to protect, and we do this through a surveillance program. So we're constantly looking out for pests and diseases, using a whole range of technologies, including satellite technology, as well as people on the ground, and particularly volunteers from the public. Our observatory network is very important to actually go out and look for problems. And then finally, we are working in partnership with lots of organisations to try and help us identify new threats and deal with them.
So we have our own weekly newsletter which we include technical articles in to raise awareness with our membership base, and we also have a quarterly publication, Landscape News, which is a journal, if you will, for Barley itself and its members. So again, we run technical articles in full in Landscape News itself. Amongst that, we also run a whole range of events on a national basis, but also regionally as well. So we'll get a whole range of people from industry coming to some of those events, seminars, toolbox talks, etc., to try and raise the awareness about biosecurity and, of course, the implications, and making sure that people are aware and well educated to try and understand and identify some of these plant pests and diseases as they arise.
So for 2017, the Arboricultural Association placed standards within the approved contractor scheme for biosecurity. So that's expecting a business to consider the implications of their work at a quoting stage or a pre-work stage. It's about making sure staff are trained in such matters, relevant for the job they're taking on.
One of the things I can do in the House of Lords is put down questions, and I have access to ministers and constantly keep pressure on government, making them A, aware of the importance of trees, and B, how very, very important this whole question of biosecurity is.
Writing, drafting,
disseminating some guidance information on biosecurity, how we can responsibly source tree stock, how we can go about our everyday jobs to ensure we're not transmitting pest and disease, simple processes like biosecurity risk assessment, businesses and organisations making policy commitments and how to go about it, and also how to build resilience in our beautiful tree stock, and potentially what steps we need to take if there is an outbreak of something.
Well, at the moment we have a campaign called Keep It Clean to encourage the public, and in particular those that are working in the tree industry, to think about biosecurity, to think about keeping things off transport, off tools, and off themselves as they move from one place to another, to make sure that they disinfect and wash things down and make sure that pathogens stay where they are. Even if there is no pathogen, it's better to have been safe than sorry.
That also applies to the machinery and equipment that arboriculturalists and others in the industry use, because that can readily transfer a range of quarantine plant pests and diseases around. One of particular concern is plain wilt that could move quite easily on chainsaws and other pruning equipment, and that could be brought in if somebody's working abroad on the near continent and come back and work on similar plant species over here.
Biosecurity is essential if we're to preserve the trees we have today in fine health and ensure that the future populations are equally as healthy.